Most self-help gurus sell you hope. Your Cioran sells you something far more valuable: lucidity. In a world obsessed with toxic positivity and manufactured happiness, his radical honesty cuts through the noise like a blade. Today, we're diving into one of philosophy's most misunderstood thinkers to discover how embracing the absurd, the meaningless, and the tragic can paradoxically set you free. This isn't about becoming depressed, it's about becoming awake. Emil Cioran spent sleepless nights wandering the streets of Paris, wrestling with existence itself. Born in Romania in 1911, he transformed his chronic insomnia and existential anguish into some of the most brutally honest philosophy ever written. Unlike academic philosophers hiding behind jargon, Cioran wrote in fragments, aphorisms, and confessions that read like midnight thoughts you're afraid to speak aloud. His work asks dangerous questions. What if life has no inherent meaning? What if suffering isn't a problem to solve, but a condition to accept? What if our desperate search for purpose is itself the source of our misery? These aren't rhetorical exercises. For Cioran, they were survival tools, ways to navigate consciousness without going mad. But here's what makes Cioran fascinating. Despite being labeled a pessimist, he found a strange kind of freedom in his dark vision, and that's exactly what we're exploring today. Before we continue, if you're intrigued by philosophy that doesn't sugarcoat reality, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into life's biggest questions, and drop a comment sharing your own experience with life's absurdity. Now let's descend into Cioran's world. Cioran believed that hope is humanity's most devastating illusion. Not because good things never happen, but because hope chains us to expectations that reality inevitably shatters. Think about it. How much of your suffering comes not from what is, but from the gap between what is and what you hoped would be? You hoped the job would fulfill you. You hoped the relationship would complete you. You hoped that achievement would finally make you feel enough. And when reality failed to match the fantasy, you didn't question hope itself. You just hoped harder. This is what Cioran called the tyranny of hope. It's a mental prison we build ourselves, bar by bar, disappointment by disappointment. We're taught from childhood that optimism is a virtue, that you must always look on the bright side, that giving up hope is giving up on life itself. But Cioran asked, what if this is backwards? What if hope is precisely what keeps us trapped in cycles of suffering? By constantly projecting happiness into a future that never arrives, we miss the only moment we actually have. This one right now, in all its imperfect reality. Hope becomes a drug we're addicted to, always chasing the next fix, the next goal, the next reason to believe things will get better. Cioran's solution sounds harsh, but contains hidden liberation. Abandon hope, not in despair, but in clarity. When you stop hoping life will conform to your desires, you stop being disappointed when it doesn't. You see things as they are, not as you wish they were. This doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic. It means acting without the delusion that your actions will lead to some ultimate salvation or happiness. You do things because you choose to, not because you're building towards some promised land that doesn't exist. The peace Cioran found wasn't the peace of satisfaction. It was the peace of acceptance, the peace that comes when you stop fighting reality and start inhabiting it. When you release your grip on how things should be, you stop being strangled by how things are. This is the first paradox of Cioran's wisdom. By abandoning hope, you abandon the main source of your despair. For Cioran, Lucidity was both curse and cure. Lucidity, the unflinching ability to see life without comforting illusions, was his spiritual discipline. Most people, Cioran observed, live in a fog of convenient fictions. We tell ourselves stories that make existence bearable, that we're special, that our lives have grand purpose, that the universe cares about our individual dramas, that death isn't really final, that suffering serves some higher plan. These stories aren't necessarily false because they're unprovable. They're questionable because we need them too desperately. Cioran practiced something different. He looked directly at what terrified everyone else: mortality, meaninglessness, the cosmic indifference of existence, the fact that consciousness might be a biological accident, the reality that everything you build will crumble, everyone you love will die, and the universe will continue without noticing you were ever here. This sounds unbearable, doesn't it? That's exactly the point. Cioran discovered that the unbearable becomes bearable once you stop trying to make it something else. The panic comes from resistance, from the mind desperately trying to reframe, escape, or deny what it knows to be true. But lucidity cuts through the panic. When you see clearly that life is fundamentally absurd, arbitrary, and temporary, something unexpected happens. The pressure releases. You stop trying to make existence justify itself. You stop demanding that your pain means something or that your pleasure lasts forever. Things simply are what they are. This is Cioran's version of meditation. Sustained attention to uncomfortable truths until they lose their power to disturb you. Where others seek enlightenment through transcendence, Cioran found it through descent, by going deeper into the darkness until he discovered it wasn't actually dark at all. It was just real. Lucidity, practiced consistently, becomes a form of freedom. You're no longer controlled by fear of death because you've already looked at it. You're no longer crushed by meaninglessness because you've stopped insisting life must have meaning. You inhabit reality on its own terms, not yours, and in that surrender, you find an odd tranquility. Not happiness, not bliss, but something more durable. The peace of someone who has stopped fighting what cannot be changed. This is Cioran's second gift. Consciousness, fully awake, can withstand anything. Here's where Cioran becomes truly liberating. He believed your insignificance is good news. We live in a culture obsessed with significance. Leave your mark, build your legacy, be remembered, make your life matter. The pressure is crushing, and it's everywhere. Social media amplifies it into a constant competition of who can appear most important, most successful, most meaningful. We're terrified of being forgotten, of living a small life, of dying without having proved we mattered. Cioran flips this completely. What if your cosmic insignificance isn't a tragedy, but a gift? What if the fact that you don't matter in any ultimate sense is precisely what sets you free? Consider how much anxiety comes from the belief that you're supposed to be important. You must succeed. You must achieve. You must leave a legacy. You must justify your existence through accomplishments. This is exhausting, and it's based on a fiction. The universe doesn't care about your accomplishments. In 100 years, barely anyone will remember you existed. In 1,000 years, certainly no one will. On a cosmic timescale, your entire civilization is a blink. Most people find this thought horrifying. Cioran found it liberating. If nothing ultimately matters, then you're free to choose what matters to you right now, in this moment, without cosmic justification. You can pursue things simply because you want to, not because they'll earn you immortality or universal significance. Your failures don't matter in any ultimate sense. Neither do your successes. This equality of insignificance means you can stop performing for an imaginary cosmic audience and start living for yourself. You can take risks because there's no permanent record. You can fail because failure is temporary and meaningless anyway. You can succeed without the pressure of maintaining it forever. The freedom of insignificance also releases you from comparison. If we're all equally insignificant in the grand scheme, then the person with more money, fame, or achievement isn't actually ahead of you in any meaningful sense. You're both dust waiting to return to dust. This isn't depressing when you really absorb it. It's equalizing. Cioran discovered that accepting your utter unimportance to the cosmos is like setting down a crushing weight you didn't realize you were carrying. You matter to yourself. You matter to the people you love. That's enough. You don't need the universe to validate your existence. The freedom of insignificance is the third key. When you stop trying to be cosmically important, you can finally be humanly present. Cioran's ultimate teaching might be this: stop asking why. Live without needing life to make sense. We're question-asking creatures. Why are we here? Why do we suffer? Why does anything exist? What's the point of it all? These questions haunt us from adolescence until death. We search for answers in religion, philosophy, science, art, hoping someone, somewhere, has figured out the cosmic puzzle that would finally make existence comprehensible. Cioran's radical suggestion: these questions have no answers, and we need to make peace with that. Not because we are not smart enough to find the answers, but because the questions themselves might be malformed. Life doesn't have a why. It simply is. Demanding that existence justify itself is like demanding that a river explain its destination before you'll allow yourself to swim in it. Children play without asking why play matters. Flowers bloom without needing philosophical justification. Animals live without torturing themselves over life's meaning. Somewhere in our evolution towards self-consciousness, we developed this peculiar need for everything to have a reason, a purpose, an explanation. But Cioran suggests this need is the problem, not the lack of answers. What if you could live like the flower blooms? Not mindlessly, but without the constant interrogation of existence itself. You experience things because you're alive, and being alive means experiencing things. You don't need a cosmic reason to enjoy coffee, to laugh with friends, to watch the sunset, to create something, to help someone. These things justify themselves through the doing of them. This is what mystics mean by being present, but Cioran arrives there through philosophy rather than meditation. When you stop demanding that life explain itself, you can finally engage with life as it actually presents itself. You notice what's happening now, instead of constantly measuring it against some imagined meaning or purpose. Living without why doesn't mean living without values or direction. It means you choose your values consciously, for your own reasons, not because you're trying to fulfill some cosmic mandate. You create meaning locally, temporarily, personally, without insisting it must be universal or eternal. This is Cioran's final paradox. By accepting that life is fundamentally meaningless, you become free to create meaning on your own terms. When you stop asking, "Why am I here?" you can start asking, "What do I want to do while I'm here?" This shift from cosmic purpose to personal choice is where Cioran found his peace. Not in answers, but in the freedom of living without the tyranny of why. So where does this leave us? Cioran doesn't offer comfort. He offers clarity. His peace isn't the peace of resolution, but the peace of acceptance. The peace that comes when you stop fighting the fundamental conditions of existence and learn to inhabit them instead. His philosophy isn't for everyone, and that's fine. Some people need hope, meaning, and purpose to function, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for those of us who find conventional optimism hollow, who sense the absurdity lurking beneath society's cheerful surface, Cioran offers an alternative path. You can look directly at life's meaninglessness, at your own insignificance, at the inevitability of suffering and death, and not only survive, but find a strange freedom in that gaze. Perhaps that's Cioran's greatest gift, proving that humans can endure anything, even the truth. You don't need illusions to live. You just need the courage to see clearly, and the wisdom to accept what you see. In that acceptance, in that lucid surrender to what is, you might find something resembling peace. Not happiness, not meaning, but peace. And sometimes that's enough. Thank you for watching.